Hello everyone, good evening. Sharing my screen. So any questions from anyone in SOAP service basics guys? We're really clear on that.
Yeah, Prasad, can you go little slow, please, if possible?
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Yeah,
Do feel free to let me know. So wherever,
yeah.
but you're clear with whatever we discussed regarding the SOAP services, right?
I have done that practice, okay, but
Okay.
as of now, I don't find that any because I
You don't
already
have any.
worked IHC. Already IHC web services I have done in the Artwal,
Okay, fine. Yeah.
so that's why I have little idea. But the terminology is different, so that's why if you go little slow, that is better for us.
Sure, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So we'll focus on REST APIs today, and cover we will cover REST APIs in exactly the same way we covered SOAP services. What did we do yesterday? We went to the documentation screen. We picked up one of the standard SOAP service given by Oracle, and we have seen how to use it to submit a job and how to use it to get the job status. I mean, we invoked a couple of operations in the SOAP service, and along the way, we understood the basics of it. Today, we'll focus on the REST APIs. Again, let me log into Fusion Cloud Application first. ESCV instance is up and running. And we've also got one more instance, guys, ETAQ. I would just update the instance logins here. I've recently got this login. Let me just quickly check if this is up and running. Yeah, I'm able to connect to this. But that's okay. We can use either of them. I just want to have at least a couple of instances available for you folks to practice. Okay, so we are going to use Optima YAML itself. So yes, we have seen that Oracle has given a lot of SOAP services to interact with this Fusion Cloud application, right? And we picked up one such example and covered SOAP service basics yesterday. So we'll pick up our REST APIs today, and we would go back to the same documentation link. Let's go back to the same documentation link. Go into financials, integrate. So we covered SOAP services yesterday. Today we would go into REST APIs. And the moment I click on REST APIs, this link shows me all the REST APIs given by Oracle for Fusion Financials Cloud application. Why am I seeing financials here? Because I picked up financials in a previous screen. So if you are interested in SCM or procurement related REST APIs, what do you have to do? In the landing page, you just have to pick up that application. And in this page, whatever you're seeing here are a list of REST APIs given by Oracle to interact with only the financials cloud, not a procurement or any other cloud application. And if you scroll down, you see the long list of REST resources here. You have a resource to create or to deal with banks, bank branches, bank accounts. Now, why do you have to create bank and bank accounts, guys? If any client implements Fusion Financials, right, they would be doing a cash management module. And when they do the cash management module, uh, yes, you need to define bank branches, and bank accounts. And if you scroll down, you would be able to see a lot of other REST APIs given by Oracle. You see there is one resource called invoices, a payables invoice resource. So this resource would help you to deal with or would help you to create or manage payables invoices, meaning the supplier invoices. And if you scroll down further, you would also have other REST APIs given by Oracle. So you see for receivable transactions, you have plenty of them. You have one REST API to create receivables invoice, another one to create a credit memo, a third one to create an adjustment, and so on. Okay. So as part of the course, we are going to create, as part of the course, we are going to create 3 REST APIs. We're going to create a couple of them. at least. And in one of the REST API, we're going to use AP invoice resource. In one such REST API, we'll be using this invoice or payables resource. And we will create another REST API towards the end of the integration stack. And in that integration, we would see how to make use of receivables invoice. We would see how to make use of receivables invoice. Murali Krishna, I'll take all the questions towards the end of it. Okay, let's not deviate or digress from the discussion. Okay, any questions towards the end of the session, please? Okay, so we have various APIs to deal with the receivable transactions. You have an invoice to deal with payables resource, payables invoice as well. We have seen here. And we also have plenty of other REST APIs. So to understand the basics of REST APIs, we'll pick up banks as a resource. And the moment you pick up a bank, now first of all, let me show you where these banks are configured. So any client implements Fusion Financials, guys. Any client who implements Fusion Financials, they would have to use cash management module. And in the cash management module, they have to do the bank setup. And where do you find the banks configured in the application, guys? Click on the username. Under administration, you click on setup and maintenance. Under administration, you click on setup and maintenance. And that would take you to a functional setup manager page. This page is called functional setup manager because this page is typically used by functional consultants to manage the setups. So that is why we call this as FSM, functional setup manager. When we search for any particular setup related task in Fusion Cloud as an integration specialist, we will not use this local search. Instead, we click on the task ribbon and we go into global search. Okay, and here we have an option to search for the banks here, manage banks. Click on manage banks. And in this particular screen, you're able to see the banks configured. And you see bank details here. And we do have an option to create a new bank. And we have an option to edit a bank. And we have an option to export the banks as well. So just in case you want to perform these CRUD operations on the bank, yes, a user can log into the application, come into manage bank screen, and they can either export all the banks from here and send it to other application if required. They can also at the same time create, update, or look at the other bank details if they want to do it manually. Okay, so it can be done from this particular screen. But what if I want to do this from integration flow? Okay, so let's say you're getting a list of banks from another application and you need to load them into Fusion Cloud here. Or for whatever reason, you need to export or extract the list of banks from here and you need to send it to another application. How do you do that? Of course, manually is one option, but that is not always feasible. So if we have to perform CRUD operations on this bank's resource from an integration flow, we can make use of this bank's REST API for it. The moment you select a REST resource here, so you select a resource, so these folders that you see, we call them as REST resources. And the moment you select a resource, you would be able to see the endpoints showing up here. By default, you would be able to see 5 REST endpoints on every REST resource. Okay, banks is a REST resource, and here we see 5 endpoints. And what do these endpoints help you with, guys? They help you to create, update, and delete a bank. And we also have 2 more endpoints here. One endpoint would help you to fetch all the banks. Another endpoint would help you to fetch a particular bank. In short, these REST APIs would help you to perform CRUD operations on the bank's resource. So if I go in here, so a resource by default or usually has 5 endpoints. That would help you to perform CRUD operations, create, update, delete, and you have two endpoints to read the data from cloud. One would help you to get all the banks. Another one would help you to get a particular bank. Now, what we'll do is we'll see how these endpoints work. And for each of these endpoints, you see that there are two important parameters mentioned here. You have a HTTP method. You have a HTTP method that you need to use with the endpoint. Remember, a REST endpoint is nothing but a HTTP endpoint, which means when you try to invoke a REST API, you have to mention the HTTP method for it. Okay. And one good thing is we don't need to guess what method we need to use with an endpoint, guys, because Oracle has mentioned it very clearly in the documentation. Okay, so any REST API you want to invoke, any REST endpoint, you don't need to guess what is the method. It is given very clearly in the documentation. And what are the methods that you see here, guys? If you are reading information from cloud, or if you are getting information from cloud, you have to use get method. And if you're creating something, you need to use post. If you're deleting something, you need to use delete. And if you're updating something, you would be using a patch method. Okay, so this is the usual norm. Get, when you're trying to get some information from cloud. Post, when you're creating something. Delete, when you're deleting something. Patch, or when you're trying to update something. Okay, so these are the endpoints that we have, and these are the HTTP methods. And along with the HTTP method, you would also have a relative path given by Oracle. So meaning if I have to get all the banks, this is a path that I need to hit. Now let's pick up the first REST API. Let us pick up get all banks endpoint and see how this works. So this is an endpoint. I've copied it here. Okay. And I'm also going to copy the instance credentials from here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this path for get all banks. So what do we know from the name, guys? If I use this endpoint, it's going to fetch all the banks from Fusion Cloud application. Right? Let's see if that works or not. First of all, if you look at the path, it says FSCM. What does FSCM means, guys? We discussed it yesterday.
Financial and supply chain.
Financial and supply chain management. And since it is a REST API, you have a keyword called REST API, resources, and you have a version number, and you have cache banks. This is the name of the API. Okay, now I'm going to copy this path. And to test the REST APIs, to test the SOAP services, we have installed SOAP UI tool yesterday, right? So this is a testing tool that we use to test the SOAP services. And to test the REST APIs, we need to install a tool called Postman. Postman is a tool that we use to test the REST APIs. You're going to download option, download the application. So download this tool. There would be an executable file that gets downloaded if you are using a Windows machine. Double click on it and the tool gets installed, or the application gets installed. And once the application is installed successfully, you will see a shortcut like this appearing on your desktop. You just have to click on it to open the Postman tool. Now, when you open the Postman tool for the first time, you might probably not see any requests in here. You just have to click on a plus icon to create a new one. And whenever you create a new request in Postman tool, remember guys, if you install Postman tool for the first time, you might see a sign up page. They're prompting you to sign up for a Postman account, but you would, at the bottom of that pop-up, you would see an option to skip it. So if you don't want to create a Postman account, you can skip it, guys. And after you skip it, the collections might be enabled like this one, meaning if you want, you can put in requests into collections if you want, but we don't need it. I can just push it to the side so that you get a bigger screen. And to test a REST API, this is where you need to plug in your endpoint URL. Well, the first thing that I need to select is method. To get all banks, what is the method I need to use, guys?
Get.
Get method. And that is the one that is selected by default. Now, what is the path that I need to use? This is a path. I paste it in here. Now, does this path look like a complete path to you guys? Meaning, if I hit this endpoint, do you think it's going to give us back a response?
No, we will not get anything.
What is
No.
missing in here? What is
URL.
missing?
Server
Instance
URL.
Instance
Yeah.
URL is missing because it doesn't know. See, at least as far as we know, there are at least two instances, right? Okay, so even if you assume that there are only two instances out there, when you hit the send button, it wouldn't know from which instance it needs to fetch. And not just these two instances, guys. There are millions of Fusion Cloud instances out there. Okay, so if I just hit a send button, Postman would say, sorry, Prasad, are you all right? We don't know from which instance we need to fetch the details from. Now, what is it that we need to do, guys? We need to go into a Fusion Cloud application. And if I have to fetch the banks from this particular instance, I need to copy that instance link and I need to add it as a prefix. Take care of it, guys. When you copy the path, there would be double slashes that come in. Take care of it. Take out the double slash. So the complete REST endpoint URL, how do you get it? It's a combination of ERP instance link followed by the relative path that you pick up from the documentation, followed by the relative path that you pick up from here. Okay, and I'm going to take out that space. You should not have any space or underscore in between. Now, if I fire off this request, would it work, guys? Any guess?
No.
It will never
No.
work.
It wouldn't work. What's the reason? Reason is,
Credential. Yeah.
yeah, all the standard SOAP and REST APIs, not just the SOAP services that we did yesterday, guys, even the REST APIs given by Oracle are secured services or secured APIs, meaning you cannot invoke them without passing in authentication details. Doesn't it make sense, guys? Because if Jamal can guess my instance link here, these 3 or 4 characters, what can he do? He can load junk data into my application, or he can walk away with my data as well, right? Or anybody can do it. So for that reason, all the standard SOAP and REST APIs given by Oracle are secured ones. Until you pass in authentication details, you won't be able to invoke them successfully. Now I go into authorization. We need to say basic auth here, and we have to pass in the authorization details here. Now, what are the credentials, guys? PIMPL. And I'm going to copy this password. Now, if I fire off a request, what is it that is do? Did it go through successfully? Yes, we've got 200 OK response. And we've got back a collection of banks. It's a collection of items that we have brought back. And each item in this collection is a bank in itself. So if you look at the first bank here, what's the first bank that you see, guys? Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, right? What's the second bank? ABN AMRO Bank. Is that the same thing that you're seeing on screen here, guys? Is it the same banks that you see?
Yes.
Exactly the same. So which means this REST API, through this REST API, I was able to extract the list of banks that we are seeing here in Fusion Cloud application. So for example, in an integration scenario, if I have to fetch the banks and send it to other systems, I can, instead of user manually coming in here and exporting the banks, I can make use of this REST API in the integration flow. And yes, you've got back a collection of banks here. Because why did we get back all the banks here, guys? Because we have hit get all banks endpoint. But let's say I don't want to fetch all the banks. Let's say I want to fetch only a particular bank details. Do we have an endpoint for it, guys? Looks like we have one more get endpoint, which would help us get a particular bank details. Now, what's the difference between these two endpoints, guys? Is method the same?
Yes.
And is path same?
No, there is a bank party ID added.
The bank party ID is there at the end. So the path is almost the same, but it's just that at the end of the path, you have an option to pass in bank party ID as input. If you have something mentioned in a path in curly braces, this is called as a template parameter. This is what we call as a template parameter or URI parameter. Now, what does it mean, guys? It means, if I have to get a particular bank details, at the end of the endpoint URL, I have to put a slash, and I need to pass in a specific bank party ID as input. I have to pass in a specific bank party ID as input. Okay, so let's see if that works or not. Say this is a get all banks endpoint, right? Right at the end of the endpoint, I'm going to copy the bank party ID of the first bank. I put a slash, and wherever you have this bank party ID, guys, in place of that bank party ID, you have to pass in the actual value. In place of the bank party ID, we have to pass in the actual value. And the common mistakes that you do. These are the common mistakes that you do. Okay, I see some students doing this. They copy this bank party ID, and they would leave the brackets as is, and within the brackets they put the ID. Don't do that, guys. In place of that entire bank party ID parameter, you just have to mention only that particular party ID. In place of this parameter, you just have to pass in that value. Now let's go ahead and fire off a request. What is it that we get back this time?
Specific.
This time, yeah, we should be able to get only one particular bank now. Let's see if that works or not. Now let me check if this instance is up and running. Let me cancel it, send it one more time. It shouldn't ideally take that long. Now, what is it that we have got back now, guys? Do you see a collection of banks? Is it or is it only one bank that you have got back this time?
Only one bank we have.
Only one bank we have, right? Because you only see this Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank details. We don't see a collection of banks. And you see the response as 200, okay. So which means, yes, I can either with this endpoint, I can fetch all the banks configured in the application, or I can pass in a primary key as an input. Remember, for banks, bank party ID is a primary key, and that has been configured as a template parameter by Oracle. So which means I can pass in a primary key at the end so that I get only that particular bank details. Now tell me one thing, guys, can we only get the bank details, or can we only fetch the information from cloud or pull the information from cloud, or can we also push data to it as well? Looks like we have a create endpoint as well, right?
Yes.
So let's try this one out and see if it works. We'll see if we can create a bank, and I want you guys to help me here. Yeah, all questions towards the end, Jagadish. I can clearly guess what are those questions that might be running through your mind. Rest assured, I'll answer all of them. Okay. So now we will try to create a bank. So what do I need to do, guys, to create a bank? I need to copy the path, and I'll create a new request here. Now, what's the method that I need to use to create a bank?
Post we had.
Post.
Click on the drop down, select post here. And what's the path? Anything else I need to do?
Yes, we have to use our host.
Use our host. Anything else missing?
And then details.
Authentication.
Authentication. Anything else missing?
Parameter.
Yeah. Payload
Okay, so-
parameters.
Yes.
What is it that this endpoint is going to do, guys? This endpoint is going to create a bank in the application, right? So so here we were trying to fetch the information from cloud, and since we wanted to get all banks, we didn't have to pass anything here. Since we wanted to fetch a specific bank details, we were passing in a specific bank party ID here or a primary key. And in this particular case, we wanted to create a bank. So to create a bank, if I hit this endpoint, to this endpoint, I need to pass in the bank details as input. So only in the case of get endpoints, we cannot configure a request payload. In case of get endpoints, we cannot configure a request payload. And it is not really required as well, because you're trying to fetch the information, you're not trying to post something to cloud. Okay, and at maximum, when you are invoking few get endpoints, you might pass in one or few parameters as input. That would be applied as a filter there. In the case of create or update, that is not the case. Since you are doing a create and an update operations here, you definitely need to pass in with what details a bank needs to be created here and what details do we need to update on a bank. Remember guys, bank is just an example that I'm using. The same story applies for any other REST API that you see. Be it invoices, be it purchase orders, be it employees, the same story applies. So yes, I selected a post endpoint and I need to pass in the body. And I go into body tab, click on raw here, and I need to mention a bank details here. Now, what's the first question that you ask me? Prasad, where do I get the sample payload from? How do I pass in the bank details, right? So one good thing with our REST APIs is we don't have to search elsewhere. If you just click on that particular endpoint, scroll down, there itself you will be able to see a sample request payload. There itself you will see a sample request payload. And I could see that this is a sample request payload that I can pass to create a bank in Fusion Cloud. Now to create a bank in Fusion Cloud, what are the details that we need to pass in, guys? It is prompting me to pass in up to 6 fields in a request payload. Now, what is this payload format called as, guys? It's called as a JSON
This is
format.
JSON.
Yes.
What does JSON stands for? JavaScript Object Notation. So JSON format is quite simple, lightweight. Now, if you see here, the entire JSON payload needs to go into curly braces. The entire JSON payload needs to go into curly braces. Okay, that's point one. And for every attribute, you have two things here. You have attribute name in quotes, colon, attribute value in quotes, comma, second attribute name, second attribute value, comma, and so on. And if it is a number value, you can still put it in quotes, or you can skip it, Okay, to keep it simple, you can put everything in quotes. And the JSON format you see here, guys, it is plain and simple, lightweight format. For every attribute, you just have attribute name, colon, attribute value. Now let's compare this with a payload that we used yesterday, guys. Remember, to submit a job, we passed in a sample payload, right?
It is an XML format.
It is an XML format. Okay, that's first point. And what's the problem with XML format? What is the problem with XML format? Let's open that.
Start tag and end tag is there.
Absolutely. So for every tag, you would be able to see that it is repeated twice. You have a start tag and you have an end tag as well, right? So for every tag, it's repeated twice. You have a start tag and you have an end tag. And in between the start and end tags, you have the actual value. Okay, so that itself, so here itself, you see the payload size itself is double, right? Because you were mentioning it only once in JSON, you are doing it twice. So that means the payload size itself has doubled here. Let me show you, and apart from that, we also have too much of overhead in SOAP UI, in SOAP services.
Yes.
Like you have something called as body, header, envelope. So all such stuff is there. But do we have any of that in a JSON, guys? No, right?
No,
It's
it is-
plain and
yes.
simple, lightweight. So let me show you how this is going to look like if we convert it to JSON. How would this payload look like, guys, if we convert it to JSON?
Only one column, I believe.
So first of all, everything should go into curly braces, yes or no?
Yes.
And you just need to have attribute name, colon. We need to have attribute value. We need to have attribute value, comma, second column name or attribute name, colon, second attribute value. So this XML payload, 10 lines of XML payload with each tag repeated twice is going to look this simple if we convert it to JSON. Okay, so for this reason, and since the REST APIs use a JSON format for communication, REST APIs always deliver better performance when compared to SOAP services, and your first preference should always be REST APIs. Okay, now let's go ahead and copy this sample request payload, a JSON payload, and I'm going to paste it in here. So I'm pasting it in a body tab, selecting raw here. And what type of a format is this, guys? It's a JSON format, right?
It's a JSON.
So it's selected here, and I can also format it if I want. I can beautify it. Now let's go ahead and see if this bank already exists in Fusion Cloud, guys. So I'm going to search for it here. Do you see the bank exists, guys? This bank doesn't exist, right? And also, just to keep it simple, I would prefix UG63 here. Okay, I'm prefixing your batch identifier here, and I'm going to increase the number, a random number. I'm just changing the bank number, taxpayer ID. So this bank, let's go ahead and search for it here. Do we see that bank here, guys? We don't see it, right? So let's go ahead and fire off a request, send the request. What is it that a postman is going to do now? It would log into ESCV instance with this username and password, and it is going to go into the bank screen, and it would create a bank with these details. Okay, let's see if it does its job or not. Let's fire off a request now. And when you send the request, what is it that you're going to get back, guys? You would get
Bank
back
ID.
you would
We
get
are
back
going
a
to the party
response.
ID.
Yes. First of all, the bank is going to get created in Fusion Cloud with whatever details that you have sent in the request payload, guys. Whatever payload that you passed, with that payload, a bank is created in cloud. And you see that we've got back a bank party ID. What does this mean, guys? It is a clear indication that bank is created in cloud, because this is a unique ID generated for this particular bank in Fusion Cloud. And you also see the status as well, 201 created, meaning it is a successful creation. If it is a GET request, and if the GET request is successful, you would get 200 OK response. And if it is a POST request, you would get 201 created as a return status. This is a return code and this is a status. Okay. So we've got the bank details back. We have 2 columns as well in it, and we also have a bank party ID. Okay. Now let's go ahead and validate it, guys. Because we should always verify it in the application, right? Otherwise, how would we know whether it's created or? So I search for the bank now. You could see that the bank is created. How did we create this? Not manually. We did it with the help of a REST API. With the help of a REST API, we created it. So yes, we know that create endpoint works. Can we only create a bank, guys, or can we only do the create transactions, or can we do updates as well? Looks like we have an option to do an update as well, right? So let's go ahead and try this one out. Now you guys need to help me. What is it that I need to do?
You have to keep the party ID. And
yeah, create a new request first. What's the method? Patch method. What's the path?
Same path with
this.
the party ID.
Copy the path. To this path, what do I need to prefix?
Host.
Host name. Take care of double slashes, guys. Don't ping me in WhatsApp saying that it's not working, sir. I'll ask you to double check the URL. And in place of bank party ID, let's say I want to update this particular bank itself that we created.
30003.
Yeah, I'm going to copy that bank party ID and I would paste that in here. Okay, so what is it that we are trying to do? We are trying to update this particular bank in ESCV instance, for which we need to pass in authentication details. Okay, and do we need to
Body.
pass in anything else?
Yeah,
Yes,
payload.
IMG body. Payload.
Of course, the body as well, right? What exactly do you want to update on the bank? We need to mention here. Now, one important point here, guys, patch method. What does a patch method means? Okay, what would happen if if a tire is punctured? What do? You patch it, right? Patch it means you only fix the part where there is that hole, right? So patch means everything else would remain as is. Only the problematic part would be replaced or updated, right? So if the method is patch, then you don't need to mention, you don't need to pass all the bank details as input. I can only pass in those attributes that I want to or that I wish to update. Okay. Say, for example, on this bank, I want to update only the description part. What I can do, guys? Again, I need to know the sample payload, right? I click on update a bank and I scroll down. And when I scroll down, you see that there is a sample request payload. I copy the sample request payload and I paste it in here. Now, yes, you can also update a bank name also. You can also update the bank name as well if you want. But let's take it out. We will keep the bank name same. Let's say we just want to update the description. And I want to update the description as updated description. So if I hit this send button, what would happen? All the other details on the bank would remain as is. Okay, first of all, what this REST API would do, guys? It would go to ESCV instance, log in, try to fetch the bank that belongs to this, that's pertaining to this bank party ID. It is able to find this bank and it goes to that description field and it would put this particular description in this place. Okay, that's what it's going to do now. Let's fire off a request and see. What is it saying? Is it saying unsupported media type? So we need to select the JSON as a type here. Go ahead and fire off a request. I think the selection was not done earlier. So you need to select the payload type as JSON. And what is it that we have got now is we've got a 200 OK response, meaning the request is fulfilled. And if you see here, first of all, for this on this bank, the description is updated. And also internally the patch endpoint has called this get endpoint as well. It has called this get endpoint as well, passing in that bank party ID, and it has fetched all the bank details. Okay, so first it did the update and then it fetched all the bank details here. Now, what's the description that you're seeing here is? Do you see an updated description or an old one?
Updated.
Updated description. So which means, yes, if you go into Fusion Cloud application, I should be able to see the updated description. So let me go ahead and, so before I hit search again, you see the old description and you see the new description. So which means the bank is updated. Okay. And we tried 4 out of 5 endpoints, right? So don't try the 5th endpoint. Where delete a bank doesn't work. And we don't even have an option to delete it from the front end. So don't try it out. It doesn't work. Okay. And the common questions that you might be thinking about. So the first question that Murali or Jagadish might be waiting to ask is, Prasad, I want to get the bank details, but not on the basis of a bank party ID. Prasad, how can you expect me to get the pass in the ID here? I don't know the ID. How do I get the bank details based on some other user-friendly criteria? Like maybe I want to get the banks. Maybe I want to get the banks based on country name, or maybe I want to get the bank details based on a bank name, or based on a description, or based on bank code, but not the party ID. Can we do it, guys? So to do that, what we need to do is, normally whenever Oracle gives these get all endpoints, if you're going to get all banks, you would be able to see that if you scroll down, you see that there is an option to apply a query parameter as a string. You can pass in query parameter as a string. Remember guys, there are two ways in which you can receive inputs into REST API. There are two options in which you can receive inputs into REST API. The first one is a template parameter or a URI parameter. And what exactly do you receive as template or URI parameter guys? Usually the primary key of that business object. If it is a bank, it is bank party ID. If it is invoice, it is invoice ID. If it is purchase order, it would be purchase order ID. So meaning with that particular input, if you go to the bank's table or invoice table or purchase order table, there should be only one record in there. Okay, so if we have to receive an input into REST API, and if that input is going to help you get a particular record in the database, then we usually configure it as a template parameter. And what is another way to receive input into REST API guys? If you go to get all banks here, you could see that the Oracle has given some query parameters here. Oracle has given some query parameters. First of all, these are the query parameters that Oracle supports. And if you see here, guys, you have almost all the fields that you have on a bank, right? So these are all the fields that we have seen on a bank. So looks like Oracle has given us an option to query the banks based on any of the attribute, including the description, everything is given in here. So how does this work? So Jagadish says, I want to get the banks based on a country name. Is country name supported, guys, as a query parameter? We could see that it is supported, right? So how do we use this query parameters, right? To get all banks endpoint, at the end of this path, I need to put a question mark and I need to say Q equal to, and I need to write an expression there. And what sort of expression you can write, guys? You can write an expression using even the logical AND operators, comparison operators, everything would work. And another important point is you cannot just use only one expression. You can use any number of expressions as well, separated by semicolon. Let's see how this works, guys. So I'm going to copy this. Okay, I go back into Postman, go back to this first one. So this is get all banks endpoint, right? It's going to fetch all the banks. Did I delete something else? Yeah, I think I deleted yes as well. Yeah. So if you see, this is going to fetch all the banks. And if I pass in a specific bank party ID, it's going to fetch only that particular bank details. It's going to fetch only that particular bank details. But my requirement is to get the banks not based on a party ID, but on the basis of a country name. So I would say Q question mark Q equal to, and you say country name, right? You say country name. How do you mention it, guys? Equal to UAE. So let's say you need to get all the banks which are based out of US. So I'm going to say at the end of get all banks endpoint, I say question mark Q equal to country name equal to US. What would this get us back, guys? Again, we have got back a collection of items. Okay, that is fine. And how many banks you have in the response?
16 it is.
16 banks. So which means out of all the banks that we have, how many banks are based out of US, guys? Let's copy this, apply it as a filter. How many banks do you see? Roughly 16 banks. So whatever are the banks which are based out of US, we are able to see those banks in the response here. So what's the first bank? Bank of America. What's the second bank? Chase Bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank. So this list is matching with what we see here. So another way to receive inputs into REST API is through query parameters. And if we receive something as input as a query parameter, remember guys, this would be just applied as a filter on the resource. Okay, so this is like, if I have to explain it in SQL terminology, it is like select start from banks table where country name equal to United States. So this
Hmm.
query parameter would be just applied as a filter clause. Is it going to get you back only one bank from a DB? It can be 1, it can be 10, it can be 20. It doesn't really matter, right? So if you want to apply or if you want to receive an input into REST API, and if that REST API has to be applied as a filter on the resource, it should not help you identify an exact record. Instead, it has to be applied as a filter. So in such case, what is it that we have to do is, we can make use of query parameter in such cases. Okay. Now, can we use only one query parameter at a time, guys, or can we use a combination of them?
Multiple names.
We can use combination of them, right? So let's say I want to get the banks based on the country name, and I also want to reduce the, I want to apply another filter criteria here, saying that I only want to fetch Bank of America here. So this is like select star from banks table where country name equal to so and so and bank name equal to so and so. Now, how many banks would I get, guys?
One.
One bank. Okay. So yes, first of all, there are 57 banks. So this query is applied 17 banks or 16 banks, and then this is applied. You have got only one bank. So this way, yes, you can also make use of query parameters to to restrict the banks that you want to fetch. Now, if you go back to the PPT, it all makes sense. Now, REST APIs use REST architecture. In REST architecture, everything is referred to as a resource. REST APIs use JSON format for communication. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation. REST APIs are lightweight, highly scalable and maintainable. Why are they lightweight? Yes, because they use JSON format, and we have seen it very well here, right? So this is
Yes.
a pretty lightweight format, okay, when compared to XML. And since they are lightweight, they are going to deliver better performance than SOAP services on any given day. For this reason, REST APIs are used in web-based applications, guys. So any websites or any web apps that you see in the market today, they basically use REST APIs in the backend for communication. So let's say we want to do, let's say we are searching for something in Google, guys. Okay, let's say I went in there and I want to search out when is the next IPL auction date. Let's say I search for that string in Google and I've got 10 web links. I opened the first search result, guys. It took 10 seconds to load. How many of you will wait in there, guys, for that web application to come up or website to show the details? 10 out of 10 would have moved on to the next link, right? So yes, when it comes to web applications, performance is the most critical factor rather than anything else. And that's why most of the web application frameworks available in the market today lets you use only REST APIs in them. Do we have a web application framework in OIC as well, guys? Do we have it? We have something called as a VBCS in OIC. In OIC, yes, apart from building integrations, you can also build custom web applications as well, right? Using Visual
Yes.
Builder Cloud Service. And this web application framework, we're going to cover this towards the end of the course. If you go into this application, any application, guys, you would be able to see that right within the welcome page, you see, you can only use REST APIs in them. Okay, so within the web application, I can only use REST APIs, not just a VBCS in OIC, guys. Any web application framework available in the market today, like React or Angular, I believe they let you use only REST APIs. Okay, because they deliver better performance as they are lightweight, and they are lightweight because they use JSON. And what are the three important aspects of the REST APIs, guys? You have a resource path, you have method, which is get, patch, or post, and we have types of data transfer. Remember, guys, when we talk about REST APIs, we stress so much on JSON that might lead to a conclusion that might So some people tend to believe that REST APIs only work with JSON after the session that we do. But that is not true, guys. REST APIs also work with XML payloads, but we never ever use it. Because the reason is all the performance benefit that you get with REST APIs boils down to the fact that they use JSON format and JSON is lightweight. And this is exactly what we did. We went to the documentation screen. We picked up banks as an example, and we tried to hit 4 endpoints to understand the basics. Now we picked up banks as a resource here, guys. Even if you pick up any other resource, the same story would apply. Say, for example, if you go to receivables invoice, AR invoice. So let's say let's say your client has a billing system where AR invoices get generated. We need to load them into Fusion Cloud from an integration. So how do we do it? We can make use of this REST resource. There is an endpoint to create AP invoice here. So if you look at this receivables invoice resource, how many endpoints we have? 5 endpoints. You have an endpoint to create, update, and delete an invoice, and you have 2 endpoints to get the invoice details. In the same story, post, delete, get, and patch methods.
Right.
The paths are also same. And it's just that and even if you look at the bank's resource also, one important point is if you look at the paths, guys, out of these 5 endpoints, 2 endpoints doesn't meet the context of a bank. It doesn't need to know what is the bank that we are talking about. So get all banks doesn't need to know it because we are fetching all the banks. And this endpoint also doesn't need to know it because we are creating a bank there. Okay. But the other 3 endpoints like get, update, or delete a bank, do these endpoints need to, specific to a bank, right? Because when you try to get a bank, you need to let it know which bank you're interested in. So that's how the template parameters go. Okay. Any questions, guys? Yes, I'll go to.
I have a question, Prasad. Yesterday,
one second. Yeah, I'll go to Murali first, then Jagadish, and then I'll come to you. I'm not sure if you're one among them. Yeah. Murali, what's the question that you have? Murali Krishnan, you're on mute. Yes, Murali Krishna, I can see that you are raising your hand, but unfortunately, we are not able to hear you. Looks like you have a problem with your audio. You can look at the recording or call me after the session. Unfortunately, we're not able to hear you. Yes, Jagadish, please go on.
Yeah, see, Prasad, here, see, you said we can see the columns, right? Can you open that Postman, what we have posted to create a bank?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, here my doubt is, see, how to get these column names. See, now, if you see here on the screen, which you have created, there are only 6 columns. But on the screen of the bank, I have seen there are around 7-8 columns are there.
Yeah. So first of all, on the endpoint, you have a sample request payloads, and you might probably not see all the fields in here. You would have a few of them. And if you scroll up a little bit, you see the list here. These are all the fields that you can pass in. Okay, everything is given here. You don't have to worry.
Okay, fine. So see, then how to get the mandatory here? It will be there. See, in some columns there will be some mandatory, I think, right? So how to get those mandatory columns?
Does it answer your question?
Sorry, can you just go back? It is a little bit fast. Can I see where you got this one?
So you click on source here. So there are 2 ways you can identify the required columns. One obvious way is you can get into a Fusion Cloud application, try to create a new bank. It tells you what are the mandatory fields. What are the mandatory fields that you see here?
Yeah, okay, country and the bank, yeah.
Okay, so this is the easiest way. But if you need a textbook approach, then you can look at these attributes, click on show source. You will see all those attributes here. For every attribute, there is a criteria called nullable. There is a property called nullable. Nullable means, can this be null? Can it be null? False.
No.
So this way, if you see here, you would be able to see that nullable, this is true. Yes, we might or might not pass a description. We might or might not pass a bank number. Okay, so this way you can find it out.
Okay.
Any other
Okay,
questions?
fine. Yeah. See, other thing is in the data. Can you open the Postman? Yeah. See here, within these brackets, this is one row, right? So if I want another row, then I need to start one more bracket, right, to create it.
The standard, it depends on the behavior of the REST API. Depends on the behavior of the REST API or the way Oracle has created it. So this a standard REST API given by Oracle would only let you create one bank at a time. So if you want to say, for example, if you get 100 banks from a source system, what is it that you're going to do in your integration? In your integration, you're going to build your integration like this. Like you would build an integration flow. You would build a custom REST API in OIC that is capable of receiving multiple banks as input. Okay, so the client is going to trigger your integration. You receive 100 banks. You would use a for each loop, and within the for each loop, you invoke this standard REST API and pass in the details. So since some of the REST APIs might support multiple transactions, some might support one at a time. If an API supports only one at a time, then this is the approach that we normally follow. Okay, we receive a collection from the source system. We use a for each loop to loop through it, and within the loop, you invoke a REST API. We'll cover all of this when we build integrations. The immediate question that you say is, Prasad, what is this? If I have to pass in, if I have to create 1,000 banks or 10,000 banks, do you want me to invoke the API 10,000 times? Obviously, if you have to deal with a huge data volume, remember guys, this web services that we're talking about, right? The standard SOAP services or REST APIs, you would use them only when the data volume is very, very less that you have to deal with. So if you have to probably deal with 50 or 100 or 500 transactions, you normally make use of REST APIs or SOAP services. What if you have to do thousands of transactions? What if you have to, say, for example, you're getting a file which has 50,000 journal lines from another system. I need to load that journal file here. Are you going to use web service based approach in it?
No.
In such cases, we have something called as a bulk data upload options given in Fusion Cloud. And that is what we will focus on in FPDA automation and HDL automations. Any other questions, guys?
Prasad, Sachin.
Last
My
one.
question is,
Yeah, sorry, Prasad. Last one. See, in that get all API from the Postman. So we can just only see the data, or can we extract into Excel or some other format, something like that?
You can copy and paste it into any sheet, and you can do whatever you want. Okay, you have a
But
copy.
will it be transferred to? I mean, okay, once we copy, so once we paste, will it come into Excel?
It doesn't come into Excel. This is basically a testing tool.
Okay, fine. Okay. Yeah,
Any
that's
other
it from
questions, sir?
no, from my side. It is.
Prasad, yeah, Prasad, I have a question. Yesterday, SOAP REST API, what we have done is like from WSDL, we have extracted the parameters and other thing. In also, there was a link for operations, like the one which you see there, package name. If you look at in this one, type package name is there, where we got the Oracle apps and the final this link, this path we can say. So from WSDL, will we able to find this path? Because yesterday we went to the document and we got this path from there. So from WSDL, we will not be able to get that. If suppose we have only WSDL and we don't have the documentation or anything supported, and not only for Oracle, something else. So will we be able to get that link or?
Now, from a WSDL, your question is, can we work out the sample payload, or can we work out the
package
values?
yes, package name I'm talking about, the package, this link, Oracle, this particular path, yes.
This will be there in Fusion Cloud application, right? WSDL will not have it. WSDL will not have that information, because if WSDL has to store that information, let me give you a simple example. Why is it not possible? Because you might have 10,000 jobs. Which job package name will be there in WSDL?
Yes, exactly. Because means we need to get a details from the
from the application itself,
from the instance where we want to configure it. So it is not our headache to get the details. It is all the tool which we are going to integrate.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, that is fine.
Okay.